Going to record the session here and we're going to jump right in. My name is Rachel Jensen and I am here with two lovely ladies who are going to be my co-hosts today. We are so excited to talk to you about this topic now more than ever. Having a plan B, protecting your most important asset is so critically important. In addition to be able to make sure that your most important asset is protected, you're able to obtain generational wealth stewardship through an investment and ownership in teak land. So as mentioned, my name is Rachel Jensen. I'm originally from New York. I've been living down in Latin America since 2012. Originally, I was based in Nicaragua, Managua specifically, was going back and forth to Belize quite a bit with the job I was in, and ended up just really falling in love with Belize. So although today we're talking about Panama and Nicaragua specifically, your group here is based in Belize, specifically San Pedro, and there's a reason for that. We're all very globally minded, internationally minded. I obtained my residency in Panama back, I think it was 2015 or 16, because what we understand is that the world is a very big place, and having options regardless of where you think you may want to be is important. Now, although I live in Belize, I did obtain a residency in Panama just because it was such an easy plan B. And maybe at some point I'll end up living in Panama. I don't have to make that decision now. We already have the residency, so it's easy enough to do. So I specifically got the residency through ownership of teak land through this program specifically. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to answer those for you at the end of the presentation. You're going to use that Q&A part where you typed in where it is that you're calling in from. That's where you'll type in the questions as you have them throughout the presentation. Also, jot down this email address, webinar@ecidevelopment.com, webinar@ecidevelopment.com. You'll see that pop up on the screen on a few of the slides here. That is going to be the primary email address that you use if you're going to request any of the complimentary resources that we mentioned during the presentation. There are quite a few of them, so make sure you're jotting down that email address so that you can send an email to request those documents. All right, I'm going to introduce the lovely ladies today. We have Katie. Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Ejikeme, and I'm a property consultant here with ECI, just like Rachel said. I'm originally from Madison, Wisconsin, moved around the U.S. a few times, and landed here in Belize. I actually made the move last October. It was one of the best decisions that I could have made. And I'm really excited to be on the webinar today with all of us like-minded individuals looking for that plan B through a second residency. So thank you all for having me, and thank you, Rachel.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. And with us today, we also have Alyssa. Alyssa, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hey, everybody. So my name is Alyssa Escobar. Rachel introduced me just a minute ago. I also work with ECI and am here in Belize. I moved down here in 2014 and then got my citizenship here just a couple years later. I'm married to a local Belizean. Both of us are actually dual citizens, which gives us, like we were talking about, that plan B option. We have the ability to move about as we need to, and no matter what's happening in either of our countries, we have the flexibility to do what's best for our family.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have children here as well.
Yep, we do. We have 4 kids, aging from 1.5 now to 7, which is just crazy. They grow up fast. I know many of you are probably in that boat, way faster than you want. But again, for our kids are all dual citizens also.
Yep.
So giving the option for our entire family to do what's needed when we need to do it.
Awesome. And you're going to hear that topic quite a bit talked about during the presentation here, is having that residency, perhaps getting citizenship down the line if it's important to you. But as you heard both of these ladies mention, it's just a great plan B, an insurance plan to put in the back of your pocket in case you ever need it, in case Alyssa and her family ever wanted to go back to the States, in case I ever wanted to move to Panama. You know, if Katie says, yes, Belize is home for me, I'm going to stay here, having residency really is key. So it is very important for you to think about that as you're preparing for your future. So we're going to just jump right in and get started. So quickly, before we get into the presentation will be about 45 minutes, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for questions. So bear that in mind as you are listening here. But a little bit more about who we are. We are entrepreneurs who started in the region over 25 years ago. You may have seen the name Michael Cobb before. He's a real estate developer throughout Latin America, does a tremendous amount of work with the National Association of Realtors, has served on their board before, is building communities, resort and residential communities throughout Latin America. You heard the ladies here mention ECI Development. That's our development side of the organization. But also about 23 years ago, Mike and a group of a total of 6 investors got together when Mike was about 35 years old, and they were looking for an investment that they could make that would serve their families and their kids and their grandkids and their great grandkids for generations to come. And after a tremendous amount of research and really identifying what that right investment would be, they decided on teak land. So at the time when they purchased land in Panama, it was just an empty pasture at that point. The first farm that was planted is about 22 years old. At this point, it's getting ready to harvest in 3 years. But over time, we started picking up more and more land and giving people the opportunity to own it, whether it was for the investment side or perhaps for the residency side as well. Now, Jacobo, you might see his name pop up a couple of times here. Jacobo really is the mastermind behind all of this. He's the one who's making sure the trees are growing properly. He works with a professional management company called Heo Forestal, and he was actually one of the original folks who helped Mike and the initial investors find the land in Panama. So he drove them around before the Pan American on the east side of Panama was paved, and a truck, and they were just looking out at properties and seeing where would be a best fit for that farm. In addition, not on the presentation with us, but actually sitting next to us is Betsy Rosenlund. Betsy is our director of pre and post sales, and you'll see her name pop up as you are deciding to own teak with us. She'll be an integral part of that process, making sure titles are all good to go. So at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is you. And what are your goals? What are you looking to get out of this webinar? What are you looking to get out of ownership of teak land? Is the residency side of it. Maybe you're looking at this from that freedom perspective or having that plan B. And we have I would say over 600 owners at this point between the multiple farms. And the reasons you see here on the screen are the top 5 reasons why those 600 plus owners have decided to own teak with us. Some were looking for that security. They know teak has been around for centuries, around in the marketplace for a very, very long time with a proven track record. And having an investment like that gave them a lot of peace of mind. In addition, there's that diversification aspect, not just diversification of location, but also of asset classes and time. So yes, of course, diversification of countries is important. You've probably heard the old adage, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And that is so incredibly true. And we're seeing that now more than ever. The world is your oyster. It's such a global environment. And so it makes sense to plant your flags in different countries. In addition to that, we said asset class diversification. So perhaps you're invested in stocks and bonds and traditional real estate right now. That's great. But adding in that next component, that agricultural piece, is critical as well. And we'll talk about who's already investing in timber and how you can do the same. And then the next piece here is I'm going to go back one more, that diversification of time frame of an investment. And I'm going to really challenge you to think outside of the box during this presentation, because it's very easy for us, especially those who are invested in real estate, to think about cash flow on a monthly basis. Or if you have rental properties in the vacation market, maybe you get that cash flow on a weekly basis. Teak is a 25-year harvest cycle. 25 years is the harvest cycle of teak. That's a long time. And so you have to challenge yourself to think beyond the traditional time frame that you usually think about. And in the end, you will be quite well rewarded. And then there's that legacy aspect of it, that generational wealth stewardship. If you have kids or grandkids, or maybe you're not at that point yet, and you're just thinking about how you can best protect yourself and put your money, park your money somewhere, let it do its thing, let it grow in value, and then come back to you. It gives you that sort of legacy planning. And then of course, the freedom and the plan B aspect, freedom to be anywhere you want in the world, and plan B, which is that residency component. So again, these reasons may resonate with you. There may be other reasons why it is you're deciding to look at the opportunity here, but you will see there are great options available for you. So we're going to talk about a couple of different farms throughout Latin America. There are 2 in Panama that we're going to mention. The first farm I mentioned that Mike started about 22 years ago is currently sold out, but we do have great options for you. We have teenage teak, which is 15-year-old teak, and then newborn. And remember, teak is a 25-year harvest cycle. So with the teenage teak, what that means is we have 10 years left until that big harvest. Then there's the newborn teak as well. The newborn, it's just being planted 25 years until the time that it is ready for harvest, but we do have thinnings that happen throughout. I'll talk to you more about the thinnings throughout the presentation. But you can see there at the bottom line, the parcels started about $7,000 plus closing costs for the newborn, and then about $17,000 for the teenage parcels. And then we have the net projections there right above it based on the projected payouts over the next few years. Now, the second opportunity that we have is at Gran Pacifica in Nicaragua. Nicaragua has really been a champion for freedom over the past year. We've seen a lot more people expressing interest in getting their residency in Nicaragua. So we've put together special bundles for folks who are looking at residency specifically. In order to get residency in Nicaragua, you need to invest $30,000 or more. So if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that special residency bundle, $30,050, which is a total of 5 parcels plus residency costs. And then there's also the baby teak, the 1-year-old teak, which is great. You'll see that because there are different age teak, you have that laddered payout over time. So it gives you that opportunity for cash flow at varying times. All right, so why don't we jump right in? The first reason here, tell us about the first reason why it is that people are deciding to own teak.
Yeah, well, one of the primary reasons to own teak is the idea of giving back to Mother Nature. I don't know about everybody on the line, but personally, I want to be able to leave the planet a little better than when I got here. Mm-hmm. And through this opportunity, we're really committing to reforestation. So just take a minute to note that every minute, 85 acres are being deforested, being destroyed. And by this time this presentation is over, about 5,100 acres will have been destroyed. That is significant. Absolutely. So again, through this ownership, we're giving back to Mother Nature just as she gives to us. Now, another benefit, which I don't think is in the presentation, but maybe take a second to grab a pen, piece of paper, write this down, is the fact that there's no income tax in Panama on your yield, that harvest yield. So there's also no property tax. So when you own this parcel, this property, you are not being taxed on it. So through this commitment, we are committing to reforestation. You get a little kickback yourself.
Yes, yeah, and it's a great point to mention, and it is something really important to know. It's a reforested property, so you're committing to replanting. Every time we harvest, we replant and do it again, replant and do it again, and then you leave it for your kids and grandkids and great grandkids. And it's really exciting because we just partnered up with a group called ACES, and this is something that Alyssa has been near and dear to Alyssa's heart. So I'm going to let you explain ACES a little bit more. But your investment is helping Mother Nature. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about ACES and the contribution when folks decide to become an owner?
Yeah, for sure. So the beauty of this partnership is that every time that a teak plot is purchased, then we donate $75 of that purchase cost into ACES. And that goes to reforest some of the mangrove population here in San Pedro. And for those of you guys that don't know, mangroves have a diverse amount of benefits for the environment, but they also benefit the security and the stability of the island itself. So when we are replanting into these mangroves, we're increasing biodiversity, yes, but we're also increasing the stability of the island. So this partnership with ACES allows us to give back to the environment, give back to Mother Nature, like we were talking about, but it also helps us to support our local community. And to support some of those areas that have been just devastated with some of the forestation on the island is for mangroves. And including in that, we have this connection with ACES, like we're talking about. So yes, there's a mangrove reforestation or restoration, but there's also wildlife rehabilitation that they do, as well as marine education. ACES is a great organization. Take a look. You'll see down at the bottom of the website there, or at the bottom of the screen there, it's a website. So if you want more information on ACES, follow that little link down there at the bottom, and you can learn all about their products. They also are doing Monday with mangroves. So you can learn all about mangroves and what's happening with the mangroves on the island.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I'm very excited about that. For those of you who've been following us for a while, you know that we're a very internationally minded organization. So it's awesome to be able to contribute back to Mother Nature. All right. Second reason why folks are deciding to own timber.
All right. The second reason why we're seeing people deciding to own teak is the huge demand for it, and the global supply is down. So you can see here, teak is being harvested at a rate of 8 to 12 times faster than it is being replanted. Now that's really significant. So what that means is there's a little supply, but still a growing demand. And what we've seen is the global demand for fine hardwoods is increasing as the population increases. Now, when you're looking at the investment opportunity, it's important to understand that we want to know, how are we going to make our money back? Where's our money coming from? So here's a chart that shows, the next slide, I think, the 2 countries that are expected to be the most populous by 2100. So probably not a surprise to anybody on here that India and China are at the top of that chart. But what's also quite fascinating is that these countries are the 2 largest consumers of teak. So the 2 largest consumers of teak are also the 2 most populous.
And that's a great point to mention. And, we always want to know who it is that's going to be the end buyer and if it's going to be a viable investment. And by seeing India and China as those two most populous countries, it's a big deal. And India and China, the big reasons why they're consuming a lot of teak, of course, they have a huge population, but also because there's a lot of value to it. And it's seen as a sign of wealth to have teak products, whether it's teak flooring in your house or teak beams or construction generally of teak or teak furniture. There's longevity to it. There's a lot of value. And we're going to talk about those remarkable qualities in a bit, but it's not really a surprise to see that these are the two countries that are projected to be the most populous, but it is pretty neat to see that they are the two biggest consumers. And in addition to that, something that I want to mention is it's always great to have an external market, to know that we have a group that we can sell the teak to down the line. What we've been working on over the past few years is creating a market within the countries where the teak farms are. So Panama and Nicaragua is where we're talking about specifically today. And so through the development side of our organization, we've been able to create partnerships where we'd be able to sell the finished teak lumber to the developments, and then the developments would be able to integrate that into the residential and resort communities in Panama and Nicaragua respectively. And that's awesome, being able to keep the teak in country, so that way we cut back on costs of shipping and costs of getting the goods out there. Now we're able just to keep it within country and show off the remarkable products that are being made out of the wood that's grown there locally. So it's really exciting to see all of that happening. And this is a good chart to note here, is that plantation teak values continue to have more value than trees that are growing naturally in the wild. And that's probably not really a surprise when you think about it. Plantation teak is grown with the intention of harvesting it and selling it to the marketplace, whereas naturally growing teak, it's a seed that sprouts out of the teak trees and just grows on the side of the road and is not being managed and maintained properly. So when it is being managed and maintained properly, it has more value. In addition to that, teak continues to increase at an average about 5.5% per year. When we show you the numbers on the screens, the projections, we do not include that 5.5% per year. We also do not include inflation into any of the numbers. So bear that in mind as you look at the projected returns. But we're seeing teak values continue to increase, plantation teak continuing to have more value as well. And some of the big reasons why there is increased value is because there have been teak exportation bans. So there are 4 countries where teak grows naturally. You see it there on the screen: India, Laos, Indonesia, and Myanmar. And these countries have placed bans on logging these trees because there was just incredible overlogging, illegal overlogging of these trees, and there just weren't any new trees being reforested. And that's why, coming back to what Katie was talking about, having the land be a certified reforested property is critical. We give the land about a year to breathe in between, and then we plant the trees and we do it again. And I've had a couple people ask me about intercropping. We do not do intercropping. The teak trees demand the nutrients that are in the ground, but we make sure that it's all being maintained properly. And then in addition to that, the third reason is the above average returns and the fact that it's ultra safe due to the real value. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about this, Alyssa?
Yeah, as Rachel said, it's such a safe investment because there is a guarantee of the investment coming around to harvest, right? So you look at this, the S&P versus the timber, and you'll see the S&P grows there in the middle, and then the timber on the top line there. And you can note the timberland investors have made 325.52% since 1987. That's huge investment return, right? That beats the S&P 500, which is 223.11% return, by nearly 50%. That's a pretty big difference in the two, and the volatility of the S&P is even huger with that. I mean, we've seen that with the stock market changes over recession times, right? You have this volatility of the stock market that people talk about all the time, whereas timber, it maintains its true and standard. And you'll see here, this is, as Rachel mentioned earlier, it's a long-term investment. So you see this initial investment of $10,000 at the top of the screen here. 40 years later with that, and the return, $1.5 million in your return. That's a guaranteed return of investment based upon the safety and the value of the timber involvement. And then you have this quote here from Steve Sugard, who works for Porter Stansberry. Many of you know Porter Stansberry. He says the trees grow through recessions. They grow through wars. They grow through stock and real estate crashes. They grow through everything. They give you built-in investment growth that isn't guaranteed with a stock. Just like we were just talking about, right? In 2008, 2012, biggest recession in US history that we've had to date, and yet the tree still grew. Your investment still grew, despite what was happening in the world and on the world platform. there is not many things that you can say that of, really, if you think about investments. There's not many investments that made that type of growth during a time when there were so many things that were falling and crashing.
It's true. And even our investors now in the farm, when the whole pandemic started last year, we were getting emails, jokingly emails, but they're like, all right, are the trees still growing? Or we had one of our owners reach out and say, hey, did you put a mask on the trees so that they still continue to grow? And, we joke about it, we have fun about it. But at the same time, it's exactly right, Alyssa, is the trees continue to grow. They don't care what's going on in the world today. In fact, that probably would have been a prime time to be harvesting teak in the last year, because I know construction costs were increasing. People were home. They were starting to work at home projects. And so I know lumber costs have generally just increased over the last year, but we're seeing that as the trees grow, it makes sense. They're literally growing in size, so they're growing in value. Every year they get bigger, which means there's more board feet to sell at the end of the day and more profit that goes to the owner. So a really important part there. And when you're thinking about who already owns timber, there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel, for us to reinvest our investment strategy. Let's just take a look at what the ultra wealthy are doing. So here are a couple of examples. John Malone has over 2 million acres of timber generally. Ted Turner over 2 million acres generally. I think for me, the most interesting one in here are the endowment funds. Northwestern is just one example who has double-digit percentage of their portfolio in timber. Harvard, Yale. We have a teak resource guide that I'd be happy to send to any of you. Get that webinar at ecidevelopment.com email address out, and we'll be able to send you the details on it. But we have all these charts and graphs and reports, and you're able to see who is already invested in timber. Here are some other Forbes 400 owners, and take a look at what they've invested in timber. And this is the timber market generally, but what they understand is by putting a percentage of their portfolio in timber, they are creating a secure portfolio for their children, for their grandchildren. And think about it this way. If you have stocks in the stock market and you have that heir down the line that decides that they want to liquidate all the stocks and buy the brand new yacht for him or her and all their friends, then they'll do that. They'll take the stocks, they'll liquidate it, take the cash, and go buy the yacht. With timber, there are harvests that happen, especially teak, every 25 years. So at the 25th year, there'll be a big payout. We'll replant and do it again. So even if that grandkid or whomever takes that money and goes and buys the yacht, well, good news is there's going to be thinnings and there are going to be more harvests down the line. So they can waste away that money if they choose, but at the end of the day, they're still keeping it within the family. And for a really long time, though, ownership of timber was reserved for the ultra wealthy, was reserved for the people who have the hundreds of millions of dollars to put towards one investment. Now, I don't know about you, but I certainly don't have any money like that. And when this opportunity came available, where we were able to take our farm and sub-survey it into smaller parcels and give folks like you and me the chance to own teak, it became a lot more attractive for a lot of people who just previously didn't know how they could enter the timber industry, or maybe financially didn't have the means to enter the timber industry. And so here are some other owners. As I mentioned earlier, we have about a little over 600 owners, probably even more than that at this point. But here we see just a couple who've come out and are officially tree huggers. They've all hugged their trees at some point. They're there on their parcel. Jim and Renee standing there by their parcel. But we have a really great group of people. And I know these are all US citizens here that are represented on the screen, but there's a really incredible international network of globally minded people from all around the world, from Korea, from the US, of course, from South Africa, from Netherlands. It's a real international minded group who all have the same mindset and the same mentality. So we have a couple of testimonial videos for you that we're gonna just put here on the screen.
Hello, my name is Renee Gonzalez.
And I'm Chelsea Gonzalez.
First, I'd like to tell you my reasons for investing here. I really like the aspect of sustainability, giving back to the environment. I invest elsewhere in solar panels and other companies that are renewable based. And it still has a benefit to bring in my wife. She has her own reasons.
Yeah, we have children, and so we'd like to have an investment that would also benefit them down the road. I mean, the first time around will directly benefit, but we keep reinvesting. This is something that our generations to follow will be able to benefit from.
Yeah, and I almost envision bringing our kids out here one day and showing them about all this. Yeah.
And then we have one more for you as well.
Hello,
sorry guys, they're on the same one.
Gonzalez.
I'll go to the next one. And it should be playing in a moment here. Okay, perfect.
Hey, hello, I'm Bart Bregman from the Netherlands, and I'm a digital nomad, and I'm here in the Teak farm of ECI development, and basically what it allows me to do is to obtain the residency in Panama so that I have a tax purpose as a digital nomad or a tax country as a digital nomad. And Panama tends to be a territorial tax country, so that means that if I'm a perpetual traveler, I'm allowed to declare that I pay tax here, but basically I don't have to pay tax because I'm not living in Panama. Income is foreign income and it will not be taxed. So this is a perfect solution for me. And I also get return of investment from my beautiful trees in nature. I like it.
Awesome. So you can see they have their different reasons as to why they are investing in Teak. And, you know, maybe you're more along the lines of Renee and Chelsea, and you're thinking generationally, thinking for the kids, thinking for yourself. Maybe you're thinking along the lines of Bart, where you're thinking residency and establishing yourself in another country. But I think for me, the most interesting part in all this is our youngest investor is about 20, 21 years old when he first invested, and our oldest was about 93 when he invested. So you have folks all across the spectrum who are looking at this for different reasons and different purposes, but all coming together and really celebrating that like-mindedness. So that's pretty neat. But Teak has been around for a long time because there's a lot of worth to it. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so like Rachel was just saying, teak has been around for centuries. It's a well-known hardwood that has a lot of value. It's extremely durable. And after year 3, the tree is resistant to insects, termites, fungus, rot, fire. And that's really what brings a lot of that value when you're making fine furniture and outdoor furniture and even using it in shipbuilding and making boats and yachts. Taking a look at the like I was saying, when you use teak in a lot of products, it brings a lot of value to that product. So you'll see it again with a lot of, you know, boats, just to add that extra.
Yep. And if any of you are boaters, Chris Craft Boats, you may have heard of them before. They're very high end, very expensive because they integrate teak into it.
Yeah. And then taking a look at some other products teak's used for, you can see this $800 chair.
A teak chair, one chair.
One chair, $800. Or maybe you're interested in a bath mat for about $250. So even the teak that is produced from the thinnings, you'll see it has a lot of value, as seen with this $3,000 mule.
Yeah, the teak mule to put in your corner if you're looking for some decor in your house. And you know, we kind of like giggle about it over here, but you know, the reality is there's so much value in teak, and you can see that in the price tags.
Yeah, and so an attendee to one of our conferences actually sent us these photos. So he makes custom-made teak gates, and they started at about $65,000. And then again, when you're looking at this advertisement for this $45 million penthouse, they're advertising the teak floors, because that again just shows you that teak is bringing value to what it is that they're trying to sell. And again, teak is durable, so you do see it, and again, in a lot of outdoor furniture, especially in tropical climates, because it holds up so well. And this next slide is probably my favorite example. So this chase was recovered from the Titanic wreckage. This to me really shows the time value of the teak hardwood and all in one.
Yeah, you know, it truly is incredible. And to even speak to that a little bit more, you know, when you're looking at different investments, you want to know about its longevity in the marketplace. And yes, longevity of it being durable, and you know, seeing that this came up, but also that teak has been around for hundreds of years. And so we know there's value. It's not just a perceived value, it's real value, because of the qualities like it being resistant to fire, rot, termites, bugs, and the fact that it lasts forever, since it's such a hardwood. But it really is incredible. And for teak to grow and to have value, it needs to grow in the right sort of climate. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the teak climate?
Yeah, when we were looking at the optimal locations we were looking for the teak farms, that was really why we chose those sections we have in Panama, is because it's in an area where it's got the perfect soil, the perfect climate, and it allows the teak to grow at the right process and the right development levels, so that we can really harvest the optimal amount of teak from it as well. So you'll see this is the original planting we did in 1999. And then moving on, we have the 2000. There's the seedlings that are starting to grow. It's crazy to me too. We look at, you know, we harvested and we planted a bunch of stuff during the pandemic, and I'm thinking about the little tomato sprouts we have in our yard right now. And I don't know about you guys, but my tomato plants, the leaves on them don't look like that after a year. So I just think too, the growth of these hardwoods, right? It's unbelievable. So this is 2007, again, the needed dry season that they have. 2013, we started doing the residency partnership that we are now doing, that we're offering you guys, that you saw earlier on the slides. And we also started doing these farm visits. So as you can see here, we have some of our investors that have come that own the teak. Like Rachel said, people own teak for all sorts of varieties of reasons. You can see the diversification here of the group. And, even as my husband and I have talked about that, we go, okay, like we can invest in teak for our kids that we could think about college. And those of you that have kids on the screen, who knows what it's gonna be when our kids go to school. But 25 years, we actually, like some of the people in this group, potentially, we can bring that back into our kids. They can help pay for college, and then potentially they could help pay for their kids' college. It's over and over and over again as the foresting is replanted, and that we provide back into what's happening on these properties, because we own the space. We own the land. And so then therefore, as we're committing to this reforestation, like many people in this group, it's a diverse reason why they're doing it, but it's not just, like Rachel said, the ultra wealthy. It's a very wide scape of people that are donating into they're purchasing these lands, right? And they're getting the returns on it.
Yeah, exactly. And so just to recap the Panama opportunities, we have the teenage teak there. Remember, teak is a 25-year harvest cycle, so 10 years until the final harvest. And both of these ladies here also mentioned thinnings. So thinnings are when we remove the trees that aren't growing as well as the others. We sell them into the marketplace, and then you as the owner receive the profits from that. That happens at age 12, 18, and 20. And then the big harvest at age 25, we let the land breathe for about a year, and then we replant and we do it again. And as Alyssa mentioned, you own the land, you get title to it. So you own the land, you own the trees that are on the land. And then from there, we replant. There's a minimal replanting cost, and then you keep it again for generations. And then in addition to that, there's the newborn farm. It's 0 years old at this point, and that's a great way to just get into the timber market if you are looking for an easy and affordable way to do so. Now, I'm not going to go too specific into Panama as a country. There's a lot of great things about the country. It's very economically stable. It has the Panama Canal, as many of you know, so it's like a reoccurring ATM machine to provide money and funds to improve infrastructure and whatnot. But if you would like to get a copy of that Panama 101 webinar recording, just email us, webinar@ecidevelopment.com, put Panama 101 recording in the subject line, and we'll make sure that you have the latest copy of that. But how you benefit, you own the land and the trees. We just mentioned that you get title to it. That's critical, that's important. It's not a lease, it's not on a per harvest basis, it's yours for life. In addition to that, there are laddered years of profit. So we have the thinnings that happen at 12, 18, 20, the big harvest at age 25. And as you saw, we have teak that's different ages. So what you're able to do is maybe get a 1-year-old in Nicaragua, get a 15-year-old in Panama, and then you have the thinnings and the big profit at age 25. And the big part in all of this is the professional management team. Now, we mentioned Jacobo a little bit earlier. He works with Heo Forestal, and he was the one, as I mentioned, that helped us find the original farm earlier. He's helped us along the way since, and he works with a group. Heo Forestal really is the best industry leader out there for managing, maintaining, and growing teak farms. They've managed thousands upon thousands of hectares of teak, not just in the Darien province, but all throughout Panama, and really know what they're talking about. And at the end of the day, it's really about the team. It's about the management and making sure the trees are growing properly. And what you're able to do is pair up ownership of the teak with a personal freedom package, which includes your residency, a bank account for a primary applicant, and a Panama corporation. Do note that for the teak, the $18,000 that you see there includes the titling fees. So that is a turnkey price. It includes everything there. You can opt for the personal freedom package should you choose. It's not required. You can also choose to do it later on if you want. So you don't have to decide that right away. But fun fact is we also accept cryptocurrency. I know it just says Bitcoin there, but we accept a wide variety of crypto, and be happy to talk to you about that. But why people are deciding to get residency in Panama is because it's one of the easiest countries in the world to obtain residency right now. One of the easiest to obtain and also maintain. You only have to visit 1 day every 6 years. And we heard from Bart a little bit earlier about why he decided to become a resident of Panama. I highly recommend you talk to your accountant or your CPA about any tax benefits if you decide to go that route. But establishing a residency in a country like Panama is a great way for you to at least have options for yourself. And the neat part is also that you don't need to reapply. So it's permanent. Once you have it for life. And there are many residency programs. I know after the 4th or 5th year, you have to reapply for it and go through that process again. Not in Panama. Panama is the easiest stepping stone for you if you're looking for the first best step or the next best step in your global protection plan. So bear it in mind, even if you've never been to Panama, even if you may not have an interest in living in Panama, at least securing something as you figure out where you want to be is so critically important. Be happy to talk to all of you about the residency process. You do have to go to Panama a couple of times in order to apply for residency and pick up your card. I'm not going to go through the nitty gritty details, but do reach out if you want us to further chat with you about it. And then you'll meet other internationally minded people. Here are just a couple of folks who also decided to get their residency or own Teak with us. And they've really, I love messages like this because we see that they are achieving their goals and accomplishing what they wanted. And the one there on the right-hand side, Eric, he's become a good friend over the years. And he was so excited. He got his permanent residency card. He lives in California, but he and his family were just so excited for this. All of these folks were, and it's been really incredible to see everything start coming to life and people really fulfilling what it was they wanted to accomplish. Panama's very geographically diverse, tons of different climates and microclimates there within the country. So if you're a beach person or a city person or more of the cooler climate, tropical highlands, you may like Boquete there, but there's a lot to do within the country. So I'm going to segue over to the next farm here, which is in Nicaragua at Gran Pacifica specifically. As an organization, we've been working in Nicaragua for over 20 years at this point. The question I get all the time is it safe? And yeah, safe, of course, is relative, but also understand that crime is typically localized. So you may be thinking about Nicaragua as what it was, 30, 40 years ago during the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and realize that it's a very different world right now. And if that's how you're still remembering Nicaragua, I recommend you do yourself a favor and come on the next tour with us and check it out for yourself. Everybody who goes down ends up really just falling in love with the country. And if you've been to Costa Rica, it's referred to as the next Costa Rica. It has a very similar geography, very similar climate and topography, and it's less expensive than Costa Rica. We know Costa Rica has been around for 25, 30 years, has made a real great name for itself. And I do personally believe that Nicaragua is on its way to that as well. But like I mentioned, we've been there for over 20 years at this point. It's a place that we feel very comfortable. If we didn't, we would not have invested in the country and tens of millions of dollars. But I really recommend everybody does themselves a favor and checks out Nicaragua. The first phase, which is now 4 years old, that those trees did sell out. We also have newborn parcels and 1-year-old parcels that are available for ownership. We have an on-site nursery. We have a full-time agronomist. We also have employees whose only job is to make sure that the trees are growing properly. So there's a picture there on the left-hand side of Ollie. He was one of our interns from the Netherlands, and he was at the farm at that point. He was probably about 3 years old, and he found this leaf from the 3-year-old tree and sent it over. So you can see how quickly it grows, like Alyssa mentioned. I don't know if your tomato plants have leaves like that, but that would be interesting if they do. But here's some more photos from our owners who came down and checked out the land and sat there by the tree or just walked through the farm, whatever it is you opt to do. But there are a couple of opportunities for profit there at the Gran Pacifica farm, the baby, which is the 1-year-old, and then the newborn Teak. And then remember, you can really bundle any of these up so that you have the option for residency, and residency is $30,000 invested or more. And just like in Panama, you own the land and you own the trees. Also, like Panama, they're the thinning profits that start at age 12, and then it goes 18, 20, and harvest at age 25. And then we have that professional management team as well, just like in Panama, making sure everything's growing properly. So I quickly want to mention the residency program in Nicaragua. So anybody of any age can apply for this residency. Do note that you must invest $30,000 in Nicaragua through a local corporation. So what that means is if you decide that you want to own that 5-parcel bundle, you'll be able to own that through a Nicaragua corporation. Our attorney will get you sorted with all of that. He'll set up the local SA, the local corporation, and then that SA will own your Teak, and then you'll receive a 5-year residency. It is renewable. So unlike in Panama, you're able to get it, you have it for life. In Nicaragua, every 5 years, you just have to renew it. So you can bear that in mind, but you can run your own business. You can come and go as you please. It just gives you that option. And maybe Panama's plan B, have Nicaragua be plan C, have Belize or we are be plan D. It doesn't matter, but at least you're giving yourself the options. And just like in the other slide where we talked about the Panama 101 recording, we have the Nicaragua 101 webinar. So if you want to get that recording, just email us, same email address, webinar@ecidevelopment.com, and we'll get you those details. And then you leave a timeless legacy. And, Alyssa, I know you mentioned your kids and you and your husband doing this for your kids. I don't have any kids, and who knows if I will. So I really did it for my family, my parents and my siblings, who just really thought I was crazy. And I'm most certainly the black sheep of the family. When I first moved down to Nicaragua in 2012, I think the first thing that they said to me was not like, yay, we're so excited you got a job. It's, you're going to be kidnapped. And I wasn't, of course, but it took them a while to really understand why do anything internationally. Why would you leave the great state of New York to go down to Latin America? And, as you can see, there's an incredible potential here for investment and going outside the stock market, so you don't have that volatility that you talked about, and being able to feel comfortable with your investment. Let the trees grow. So about, I guess this was 2016, it was right after I got my residency, I had my parents come down to Panama to celebrate with me, and coincidentally, we also had a teak tour going out while they were in town. So I took them out to the teak tour, and there they are hugging the trees, and they are now, in fact, teak owners as well. But it's been pretty neat to see that shift in mindset. So, where I'm going with this is, even if you have friends or family who really don't understand where you're going, it's okay. We have our like-minded group here. You're able to chat with us about it, what your plan is, why you're doing what you're doing. And who knows, maybe over time they'll come around. And, we see that in Belize quite a bit. People are like, why would you ever buy property in Belize? They come down to our beautiful Caribbean island here and like, oh yeah, we get it now. But there you go. You're able to become tree huggers should you choose. And then your advantages. So leave a legacy and build that generational wealth stewardship, which we chatted about. You own a real tangible asset. It's yours. It's growing out of the ground. You can hug it like we've joked around about, but it is yours. You can see it. In addition, you can use your self-directed IRA, or if you have a trust, that would be the best structure to use in Nicaragua, trust or self-directed IRA. It's not recommended that you use either of those in Panama. In fact, Panama doesn't even allow trust ownership. So if you're thinking about using that trust or self-directed IRA, think Nicaragua. And then cryptocurrency, you can do that in both of the countries. And then, of course, obtain residency. That's just such an awesome option to have should you ever choose. So I think that this was, I just keep rolling here. Sorry, Alyssa, go ahead.
It's a good thing. Yeah, so the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now, like Rachel said, right? If you are taking the investment choice now, there's going to be benefits down the line. And yeah, like it says, 20 years ago or now, which one's better? We would love to have you join us on one of these field trips that we're taking. You can see the trees in person. We've got a Nicaragua trip coming up in May, and then the Panama trip coming up in June. Take advantage of the opportunities to see some of the amazing things that are in both these countries and taste some great food probably, and take some great trips, but also get a chance to see in person in real life the tree farms and being able to see the benefits alongside other people that have already chosen to invest with you.
And then here's some complimentary resources for you. We mentioned the Teak resource white paper, which if you'd like a copy of it, just email us, webinar@ecidevelopment.com. You can use Precious in that subject line. We also have the Panama handbook, and you can just use the handbook or Panama handbook to webinar@ecidevelopment.com. And we also have a Nicaragua handbook. I apologize, we didn't have it here on the screen, but if you want the Nica handbook, just same email address and we will get those details to you.
So now you can see here the comparison chart between the different options that we have available. We can also send this to you. Obviously, probably most of you are seeing this in your screen. It's a lot tinier than you want to read, but you can see that the different investment options and what the payouts are then at the end, and that as far as what your cost is going to be upfront as well.
And then we just encourage you to reach out and chat with the team members here. And something that I like to brag upon about the team is that all of them have taken that next step internationally, whether they've relocated to another country from their home country, they obtained residency somewhere else, they obtained citizenship somewhere else. Alyssa talked about having your passport here in Belize. And I think that's just something that's awesome. It's not something that you usually get when you're talking to to someone. And I hate to even have to say that, but there's so many times where conferences and developers are living not in the country that they're representing, or they're back in the States or Canada talking about how great Belize is. It's like, all right, well, what are you doing there? I mean, we are a very internationally minded group. Betsy, you've heard her name mentioned a little bit earlier. She is getting her residency right now in Panama, is a Teak owner. So our team really believes in what we're doing and have been or have gone through the process to some extent before. So reach out to us, let us help you and answer those questions that may be on your mind. And for those of you who have been following us, you may be familiar with the fact that we have tiny homes in Panama, Nicaragua, and Belize. There are also residency options through the tiny homes. If you're looking for more of a residence, like a home or a place that you can spend time or perhaps put in an investment rental market, reach out to us, webinar@ecidevelopment.com. Hopefully you have that email address memorized by now, that webinar@ecidevelopment.com, and we'll certainly send you those details. So let's do a quick recap here. So I do want to highlight first and foremost that as a way to say thank you, we're offering $200 off each parcel. That is good for 7 days. So I think we're extending to the 24th, March 24th. You may be listening to this presentation after the 24th. I know it gets put up on YouTube. Feel free to reach out to us anyway. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe there are some new opportunities, but we just want to make sure that that part is mentioned. But let's go through the 4 different opportunities and who they're right for. So the 15-year-old parcel in Panama is really great for somebody who wants cash flow sooner or you want residency. Something I forgot to mention is that in Panama, you need to have an investment of $10,000 or more in timber or in teak or whatever, $10,000 or more to qualify for residency. So one teenage parcel will qualify you. You can add that personal freedom package as well, which is the residency package, and you're set. Or perhaps maybe you're a little bit older and you're like, you know what, I'm just thinking about this. You don't have any kids or grandkids, you're thinking about it for yourself. You can see 10 years into the future, and this may be right for you. And those of you who want entry pricing, or perhaps you want a gift, this has been a really popular option. The newborn teak in Panama has been really popular for people who want to gift the teak to their kids or grandkids. Maybe you have someone's birthday coming up or a holiday that you want to give them this gift, or maybe you just want to do something nice for them, then you're able to do that. Or perhaps you're looking at it from the entry perspective as well. In Nicaragua, at that Gran Pacifica property, there's 1-year-old teak there. And this is a great way to get that laddered payouts and country diversification, because it is 1 year old at this point. We're 24 years until harvest instead of the 25 years like we're seeing with the newborn parcels. So I would recommend reaching out, just depending on what your goals are. If you're somebody who is looking for residency in Nicaragua, you appreciate the fact that Nicaragua has how they've approached Corona and everything going on over the past year, then I would highly recommend looking at the residency bundle here. So it's $30,050 plus the personal protection package, which is the residency package, includes the corporation in Nicaragua, and also the residency, which is $2,800. And then in addition to that, we like to say thank you even more. So we're going to be offering a complimentary teak cutting board until March 24th. So tune in there. And if you decide that you want to become an owner, do note that we'll need that reservation form back from you, and we'll need funding within the next 7 days. And then our team will send you the complimentary teak cutting board. Looks like I have a couple more slides here. So we have a webinar coming up. We're going to be unveiling our newest tiny home community in Panama. It's over in Boquete David area, right in between those two cities. So that's on the opposite side of the country. That's on the west side of the country. The teak farms are on the east, and the tiny homes will be there on the west. If you'd like to get an invitation for this webinar, reach out to us, webinar@ecidevelopment.com. If you're listening after this happens, still reach out to us and we will have the recording for you. But this will be next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And here we have an overview of what we just talked about. So what I'm going to do now is open the floor to questions, and then from there, we will get them answered for you. All right, so it says anonymous attendee. So feel free, if for some reason you are coming up as anonymous, feel free to put your name at the end, because if we don't get to all the questions, then we're going to make sure our team reaches out to you. But Anonymous attendee saying, how many teak trees are in the 1/4 acre land offered? So really great question. When we plant initially, there are about 110 trees per 1/4 acre. By the time that we harvest, it's down to about 21 to 23, and that's intentional. That's how you grow teak. You use a process called overcrowding. You thin out the trees that aren't growing as well. By the end of the 25th year, you have the best trees on the land. We take those trees, we harvest it, and then we process it to lumber. And I do want to mention that I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but we take the trees and we process them from logs to lumber and we sell it as lumber. So at many places, when I've looked at other teak companies, they typically just sell the logs, but when you process it to lumber, there's a much higher profit margin in it for the owners. So just love to chat with you a little bit more if you want the business plan. We have all of this broken down in the business plan as well. Anonymous attendee is asking, where are the teak farms in Panama and Nicaragua? In Panama, we're on the east side of the country, close to, well, one of them's in Darien, the other is just right outside of the Darien. In Nicaragua, we're on the west side of the country within Gran Pacifica. And, you know, like Alyssa mentioned before, when we were looking for different locations, it was critical that we had the right soil. Well-drained alluvial soil is very important. Having that wet season and the dry season, very important. And so we had agronomists come out, did the soil samples, did everything we needed to do to make sure they were growing properly, because it wouldn't make sense for us to plant in places that wouldn't work. All right, Dennis is asking, are there natural diseases or bug infestations, natural predators to teak that could wipe out the investment? Yeah, really great question. Prior to age 3, the teak is not yet resistant to fire, rot, fungus. So there are extra precautions that are taken, firewalls, insecticide, for example. That's why we have a professional management company who does this for thousands of hectares. So it's well taken care of. But after age 3, it really becomes resistant to all of that, Dennis, which is why it is such a popular product, such a popular hardwood, because that carries over to the finished product as well. So I know when you're thinking agriculture, that is a really important thing to consider, is that fire rot. I mean, even fruits, for example, I've seen a couple of fruit investments before. And, you know, if there's no market for it, or even with COVID this past year, they weren't able to harvest their farms. So what happened is they had tons of rotten fruit that they weren't able to sell. They lost a season. Teak just grows, you know, if we weren't able to harvest it, well, it just grows in size, literally grows in value. So that's a great question. Bob is asking about international insurance. So these farms do not have insurance, but I mean, after age 3, it's resistant to all of that. So I wouldn't say it's as much of a concern. We're also in areas that are pretty well shielded from natural disasters. So you don't have to worry about the hurricanes, for example. We just don't get those in the areas that we're in. So a great question there, Bob. Says anonymous attendee who wants a copy of the presentation. I unfortunately don't know who you are, anonymous attendee, but feel free to just send us a private message with your email address and we can certainly get that over to you. I see Stanton asked about insurance as well. Anonymous attendees back and says, do we need to visit Panama to activate our permanent residency? Yes, for both of these countries, you do need to visit in person in order to apply for your residency and then to pick up your permanent residency card. So reach out to us. We can go through the specific timelines, but typically after you submit all the documentation with the residency coordinator in Panama, about 4 to 6 months later, you'll get a notice to come back and pick up your permanent residency card. In Nicaragua, it's typically about 2 to 3 months after you apply that you're able to come back and pick up your permanent residency card. Bob, this is awesome. He goes, I'm a sailor. I know and love teak. I'm remodeling my house in Omaha. I want teak floors. If I buy in now, can I get some teak flooring within the next year? Or can I simply be a buyer from an existing teak partner? Yeah, reach out to us, Bob. You know, we have our next thinning that's going to be in one of our older farms, so we can certainly talk to you about that. Or what we've even had some owners do is because you own the trees, or you own the land and you own the trees on the land, and they're like, all right, well, we don't want to harvest it. We don't want you to sell it. We want to use it for our own personal goods. So you're able to do that too. Wow. And Bob just said lumber is up 400% in Omaha since September 2020. Wow. Not a surprise though. Not a surprise. Bob is saying, can you repeat for me, what is the minimum investment in order to get residency? Oh, great to see you again, Rachel. Hey, Bob. All right, so the minimum investment to get residency is $10,000 invested. So if you're looking at the newborn teak, you will want to get 2 of the newborn parcels, or 1 of the teenage parcels will qualify you. And then I see Ken just asked the same thing there. And something that I do want to mention is the spouse or the dependents. So in Panama, it's really quite cool. Your spouse can be your dependent, your children up to 18 or up to 25 if they're enrolled in college, or it could be your parents. So I thought that was really quite neat because we had in this case, it was the grandparents who found out about the opportunity, and they ended up deciding to have their children or their child invest in the Teak. Then they qualified as the grandparent or the parent to the primary applicant for residency, and then their grandkids were also able to get residency. So it's a great way to get the family involved and get people going for residency. All right, so I'm just going through a lot of the questions here. All right, this is a great one, Evan. What is the contract with the caretakers? How are operating costs? What if there's crop failure? Okay, I'm going to start from the beginning there. So with the agreement, so the numbers that you see on the second column from the right that says projected returns, those are net numbers. Those are after the management fees are taken out. I would highly recommend, if you're interested, reach out to us for the business plan. We have a breakdown of the numbers, but overall 20% of the gross number goes to the management company, and then 15% is the processing cost to process the logs to lumber. So in total, it's about 35%, but you see the numbers on the right-hand side there are the net projected numbers after we've taken those out. I do also want to mention there is an annual fee, $125 per parcel in Nicaragua, $150 per parcel in Panama. And the reason for that fee, it's just upkeep fee. So we want to make sure that the plantation is cleaned. We don't want underbrush growing. We don't want other crops growing. So that gets cleaned regularly. In addition, we trim the branches. You want about 2/3 of the trunk down to be clear. You don't want any branches because you want the tree to grow straight. And think about when you go to Home Depot, for example, or wherever you're buying your lumber from, Bob, you want straight lumber, right? You don't want something that's all wonky. You don't want knots in it. So you really need to maintain it properly. So I hope that helps. Operating costs increase. So we're planning to stick with the 35%. There is no, excuse me, there is no, where is I going with that? Oh, there's also no capital calls is where I was going with that. Sorry. There's no capital calls. So, at the time that we're thinning or we're going to the harvest, we're not going to reach out to you and say, all right, we need money. And the reason we did it as a percentage at the end is because we want to align our goals with yours. We want you to earn as much money because that means we make as much money as possible. So that's why it's a percentage at the end. I don't anticipate the operating costs would increase there. It depends, but I highly doubt that it would. All right. So, okay, great question, Patricia. Can you get residency if you are buying through a corporation owned by your self-directed IRA in Nicaragua? Unfortunately, the answer is no. So at a self-directed IRA, for those Americans that are on the line with us, you're able to take your IRA and invest it outside of the United States. Sorry, Canadians, you cannot use your RRSPs. But if you are someone that has a self-directed IRA, I would highly recommend Nicaragua, Panama. There are just so many hoops and hurdles to go through if you want to use your self-directed IRA. But if residency is your ultimate goal, then you'll have to invest in the farm through your personal funds. And then that way you're able to apply for residency. All right, Scott. Yep, perfect, Scott. What is maintenance fees? So the maintenance fees are $125 per parcel in Nicaragua, $150 per parcel in Panama, and that's per quarter acre parcel. The reason for the difference in prices is because Panama or Nicaragua is a little bit less expensive. Stanton says, why is Bitcoin accepted? I don't know if you mean just Bitcoin, but we accept all cryptocurrency. So Stanton, I don't know if you don't like crypto or if you want other cryptos accepted, but we do accept a handful of cryptocurrencies. And for those of you who are invested in cryptocurrency, I know there's been a pretty big boom over the last few months. So take out some of the profits and use it towards a purchase. All right, so I'm seeing Rajesh, for myself to get residency as a U.S. green card holder. Okay, so if there's a list of countries that you're able to, if you're from, let me take a step back. In Panama, the residency that we're going under has a list of multiple countries that you have to be from one of those countries in order to apply for residency. If you're not from one of those countries, then I would highly recommend you look at Nicaragua. Nicaragua is open to everybody. There's not necessarily a list of countries you have to be from, but reach out to us and we can certainly give you those details. John, great question. John says, on the projected income figure, what is the projection based upon? Great question. So what we did is we took a look at the price of board foot depending on the quality of teak. There's low grade, middle grade, high grade teak. Majority of the teak that comes out of the provinces and the areas that we're growing in tends to be middle to high grade teak. So the numbers are based on the average board foot price for teak of average grade. So it's about $15 to $16 a board foot, because do remember we are processing the logs to lumber, so we're basing it on the lumber price board foot for average grade teak, and then we multiply that based on the projected amount of teak that will be coming off of that land, and we have an idea of what that's going to be, because we know what the projected measurements will be of the trees at the age of 25. Scott is asking any other fees. So we have the management fee, which is the percentage. We have the processing fee, which we talked about as well. That's a percentage at the end, and that's taken out of the projected return. We have the annual fees. Other than that, there are no other fees. There are no other fees on an annual basis, but I do want to mention there's a replanting cost. So at the end of harvest, every 25 years, we replant and do it again, replant and do it again. So today's price to replant each quarter acre parcel is about $300. I'm going to guess it's going to increase over the years, especially 25 years from now. I can't guarantee what that number is going to be. I don't expect it to be an exponential increase, but it is projected to be higher. But that would be the only other cost. In Panama, as Katie mentioned, there's no income tax in Panama on your harvest yield. There's also no property tax on Panama because it's a certified reforested property. In Nicaragua, we've already accounted for the property tax, and in Nicaragua, it's only a 2% tax. We got a really great exoneration, created a reforestation program, and we're able to get a nice tax exoneration. So I'm seeing Jacob is interested in residency and the baby teak. Yep, of course, reach out to us, Jacob, and we'll get those answers to you. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of questions here. I do like to be respectful of everyone's time, and I think I'm seeing we've gone over a little bit. I'm just gonna look at the clock here. Okay, so it looks like we've gone over a little bit, but what I'm gonna do is reach out to us if we didn't get to your question. We'll make sure that we're going through it as well. You'll hear from one of our awesome folks here on the screen. I'm gonna just point, oops, there we go. I'm gonna just bring up our team members here, because these will be the folks that you will be hearing from at some point over the next couple of days. Reach out to them, introduce yourself, let them know what your goals are and what your interests and what you want to accomplish and why you want to accomplish it. You know, that they've helped many people at this point, hundreds of people, probably thousands when we include all the people that applied for residency. And we want to make sure that we are tailoring a solution that best fits you. So with that being said, ladies, do you have any other final comments?
No. I just want to say hi to John and Evan. I know them. That's all.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, for this. This was a really great time. I hope you all learned a lot there. And I know we have a lot more questions to see, but I'd be happy to have you reach out, and we can further discuss. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.